You ever notice how some action movies feel a little too intense, like the tension on screen might actually be nothing compared to what's happening when the camera's cut? Now imagine this. You're standing on a set, surrounded by burning cars, cables, explosions, and one of the toughest men in Hollywood leans over and quietly says, "Yeah, I'm never working with that guy again." That's the world we're stepping into today. We're talking about a man whose characters are built on experience, not teenage angst. You don't become a grizzled MI6 assassin or a world-weary lawman in your 20 seconds. You have to live a little, bleed a little, fail a little, and Jason Statham has done all of that on and off screen. But here's the twist. Behind that calm voice and steel-eyed stare is someone with very clear lines about respect, professionalism, and ego. And over the years, fans, reporters, and so-called insiders have pieced together a list of big names he'd probably rather never share a set with again. Now, before we dive in, one important note. What you're about to hear is a mix of public interviews, industry chatter, and a bit of interpretive storytelling. We're not claiming secret access to anyone's private messages. This is commentary, not a courtroom. But if you've ever wondered what happens when strong personalities collide in front of billion-dollar cameras, stay right here. Because by the end of this video, you might see some of your favorite action idols very, very differently. Let's start with the name everyone always asks about, Vin Diesel. On screen, you'd think these two were born to clash. One plays the meticulous, razor-sharp operator. The other plays the unbreakable street legend who lives his life a quarter mile at a time. Put them in the same universe, and sparks are guaranteed. For years, fans assumed that the tension between Jason Statham's character and Vin Diesel's character was just brilliant acting. Two alpha males staring each other down, trading threats, trading punches, then turning around and saving the world. Easy money. But the more people heard from behind the scenes, the more it sounded like that on-screen tension wasn't entirely fictional. You've got Statham punctual, prepared, obsessed with precision, always pushing for the fight scenes to feel grounded and believable. Then you've got Diesel deeply invested in his character's image, fiercely protective of his legacy, and heavily involved in how every scene is balanced. Now imagine being a director trying to choreograph a fight where neither guy wants to look weaker than the other. Every punch has to be accounted for. Every hit has to be even. Every stare down has to keep both men's characters intact. By the end of the day, it's less like making a movie and more like negotiating a peace treaty. There were stories about scenes being reworked, lines being adjusted, and whole sequences being reshaped just to make sure no one's character lost too much ground. Fans started noticing who was in which scene, who skipped which press tour, who seemed strangely absent from certain promo photos. Did Statham ever jump on a talk show and flat out say, "I can't stand Vin Diesel"? No, that's not his style. He tends to stay diplomatic in public. But between the rumors, the body language, and the way the franchise eventually split characters into different lanes, the message felt pretty clear. These two men respect each other's power, but they keep a respectful distance. At this point, in 2025, they're professionals. They can share a frame when a studio needs them to. They'll shake hands, hit their marks, and deliver the goods. But are they hanging out between takes, sharing drinks, cracking jokes late into the night? Highly unlikely. In the world of muscle cars and gravity-defying stunts, the biggest collision wasn't always the cars. Sometimes, it was the egos. Steven Seagal. If the tension with Vin Diesel feels like a corporate Cold War, the situation with Steven Seagal is closer to open philosophical warfare. Jason Statham built his career on a very simple principle. If you're going to sell violence, it should at least feel like it came from sweat, training, and discipline. His fights look sharp because he trains for them. His hits look painful because he commits his body to them. It's not posing, it's work. Now, put that mindset next to Steven Seagal, a man whose career is wrapped in myth, bravado, and stories that sound bigger every time they're told. Over the years, Seagal has become less known for his early films and more for the controversies, the tall tales, and the way he carries himself like a living legend in a world that's, let's say, a little less impressed. You can almost picture it. Statham watching an interview where Seagal talks about being untouchable, unbeatable, or above criticism. For someone who came up doing real stunts, real training, and putting his body on the line, that kind of attitude would be like nails on a chalkboard. There have been plenty of clips and quotes floating around where Statham has made it pretty obvious he's not a fan of actors who treat martial arts like a costume instead of a craft. And fans connected the dots immediately. When he talks about people who play tough without putting in the work, the internet almost always lands on the same name. On the flip side, Seagal has never been shy about dismissing newer action stars. He's made condescending comments about stunt-driven actors, suggested others aren't on his level, and carried himself like a man who refuses to acknowledge that time, and the genre might have moved past him. So what do you get when you put those two philosophies next to each other? On one side, discipline, humility, and a commitment to realism. On the other, ego, legend building, and a reputation that many fans now see as overinflated. They don't trade public insults back and forth. There's no Twitter war, no viral red carpet meltdown. What you have instead is something colder. Silence. No collaborations. No joint interviews. No interest from Statham in smoothing anything over. He doesn't see Seagal as a rival to beat. He sees him as an example of what he never wants to become, Shia LaBeouf. Now the next one isn't about punches thrown on set. It's about something much quieter, but just as explosive. Values. Shia LaBeouf is the kind of actor who throws himself into every role like he's going into battle. He's intense, unpredictable, and often surrounded by chaos, whether it's method acting taken to the extreme, public meltdowns, or highly emotional outbursts. Jason Statham, meanwhile, is the kind of guy who shows up, knows his lines, hits his marks, and expects everyone else to do the same. No drama, no theatrics, at least not when the cameras aren't rolling. According to stories that have floated around for years, their paths crossed during early conversations for a project that never actually got off the ground. On paper, it sounded interesting. Different energies, different styles, big potential. But Statham reportedly took one look at how it might play out and decided, no, this isn't for me. And that's really where the clash started. You've got one actor who believes chaos is part of the process, that staying on edge, provoking, pushing, and even self-destructing a little is just part of the art. Then you've got another actor who sees the job as exactly that. A job. Show up. Be prepared. Respect the crew. Don't make everyone else's day harder just because you're in character or searching for some deep emotional truth. Some people close to the situation have claimed that when LaBeouf heard Statham didn't think he was right for the project, he didn't take it quietly. Allegedly, words were exchanged that felt less like professional disagreement and more like a personal attack. Whether every detail of that is true or just exaggerated fan fiction, one thing is clear. These are two men who see acting through totally different lenses. Imagine putting them on the same set. On one side, LaBeouf pacing, pushing himself to emotional extremes, maybe disappearing into a role so completely that he can't switch it off. On the other side, Statham, standing with his arms folded, watching the clock and thinking about the stunt team waiting to rehearse. It's not hard to see why they've never teamed up. Ask Statham about actors like that, and he tends to answer in calm, simple lines. Things like, "I just want to get the job done," or "I don't need the circus." He never names names, but everyone listening knows exactly the type of person he's talking about. In the end, it's not about who's right. It's about compatibility. Some actors thrive in hurricane energy. Jason Statham is not one of them, and if he can avoid those storms before they ever reach the set, he will. Jared Leto. If Shia LaBeouf is a storm, Jared Leto is more like a strange weather pattern no one fully understands. Leto is infamous for disappearing into roles, sometimes in ways that feel brilliant, and sometimes in ways that make everyone around him deeply uncomfortable. His version of method acting doesn't just stay between action and cut. It seeps into lunch breaks, rehearsal rooms, and everyday conversations. Now picture Jason Statham walking into a simple creative meeting for a potential film. He's expecting to talk story, character beats, maybe some fight choreography, normal stuff. Instead, he walks into a room where Jared Leto is already in character, refusing to respond to his own name, insisting everyone treat him like the fictional person he plans to play. You don't need a vivid imagination to know how that would go. Statham has always struck fans as a no-nonsense guy, pragmatic, grounded, the sort of man who would look at a situation like that and think, "We're grown adults in a coffee shop, let's relax." And that's exactly the kind of clash people say happened. Not a screaming match, not a dramatic exit, just a quiet decision on Statham's side to back away and never revisit the idea. Because in his worldview, there's a line between dedication and disruption. Yes, you should care about your role. Yes, you should commit. But once your process starts wasting other people's time or making a simple collaboration feel like some strange performance art experiment, he's out. Leto, of course, has his own perspective. To him, disappearing into a role is the whole point. If that means confusing or even alienating the people around him, he sees it as a necessary sacrifice for the art. And when critics say, "This is too much," he tends to take it as proof that he's going deep enough to make people uncomfortable. So here again, we get a philosophical divide, not a tabloid shouting match. One man believes in quiet professionalism, the other believes in full immersion transformation. And there's a reason you've never seen their names sharing the same poster, even if the studios tried, even if the script was strong, even if the money was massive. The energy on that set would be a ticking time bomb. Statham doesn't have the patience for someone's method acting to turn everyone else's workday into a psychological obstacle course. In his eyes, a film set is not a therapy session, it's a workplace. Mark Wahlberg. Now this one cuts a little deeper because there's history. Real, filmed, can watch it anytime history. Back in 2003, Jason Statham and Mark Wahlberg teamed up for a slick little heist movie that still has a loyal fan base. On screen, everything looked smooth. Great chemistry, tight action, clean execution. The kind of film that makes people say, "Man, these two should work together again." Behind the scenes, though? Very different story. If you believe the whispers, Statham reportedly approached that movie the same way he approaches everything. Show up early, train hard, nail the stunts, respect the schedule. Wahlberg, on the other hand, has always had a lot of plates spinning businesses, brands, side projects, and a personality that tends to run the room. Imagine trying to rehearse a carefully coordinated stunt while one of your leads is juggling phone calls, cracking jokes, turning every break into a mini networking session. For a certain kind of actor, that's fun. For someone like Statham, it's exhausting. And then there's the image question. Wahlberg has built a career around playing blue-collar, working-class, everyman characters, the scrappy fighter, the cop who never quits, the guy from the neighborhood who made good. But behind the scenes, he's also a hyper-successful businessman with a lifestyle that's anything but blue-collar. For Statham, who still carries himself like the London bloke who somehow ended up in a blockbuster machine, that kind of branding can feel misleading. He's not interested in pretending to be one of the lads, if your real life looks more like a luxury catalog. Over time, interviews and comments started to hint that these two just weren't on the same wavelength. Wahlberg would joke that Statham was too intense or all business. Statham, in his own subtle way, made it clear he didn't love mixes of big ego, brand management, and casual lateness. Hollywood producers saw the numbers and kept trying to bring them back together. Different scripts, different genres, hoping to capture that old magic. But quietly, consistently, both men seemed to say no, not because they couldn't stand each other in a personal, hateful way, but because they'd already done the experiment once and didn't want to repeat it. Sometimes, that's what a feud really looks like in Hollywood. Not screaming, not thrown chairs, just two signatures that never appear on the same contract again. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now we get to the big one. Literally. Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham on screen together looked like some studio executive's dream. Charisma, muscles, one-liners, and enough action to level a small city. Fans loved it. Studios loved it. The box office definitely loved it. But if you think that kind of pairing comes without complications, think again. From the moment Johnson stepped into that high-octane franchise, you could feel the energy shift. Suddenly, there were multiple alpha leads sharing the same playground, each with massive fan bases, massive careers, and contracts that reportedly included some very specific language about just how much they could lose on screen. There were even stories that punch counts were being tracked. Literally. If one character took a hit, he had to give one back. If someone got thrown through a wall, the other guy needed a moment of equal power. No one wanted their persona damaged. No one wanted their character to look weaker. On one level, it sounds ridiculous. On another, it makes perfect sense when you remember that these movies aren't just stories, they're brands. And those brands are tied to the real men standing in front of the green screen. Statham, with his focus on tight choreography and believable brutality, reportedly got frustrated when fights started to feel less like storytelling and more like business negotiations. Johnson, with his larger-than-life style and showman instincts, saw it as part of protecting his image and giving his audience what they expect from him. By the time their shared scenes really started heating up, the tension was obvious enough that the studio did something drastic and brilliant. They split them off into their own spin-off. To fans, it looked like a fun bonus. Great! More of these two together. To people paying attention, it looked like a pressure valve being released. Put them in a separate movie. Give them space. Let them both shine without constantly bumping into the main ensemble. Today, the relationship between Statham and Johnson seems to sit in a very specific place. Professional respect with emotional distance. They don't trash each other. They don't pretend to be best friends. They show up, do the job, know that together they're a box office cheat code, and then go back to their separate worlds. Because when you get two men who are used to being the toughest guy in every room, there's only so much space before the walls start closing in. So what does all of this really mean? 6 big names, 6 very different kinds of tension, some of it rooted in ego, some of it rooted in work ethic, some of it rooted in deeply clashing philosophies about what acting and professionalism actually look like. With Vin Diesel, it's about control and legacy. With Steven Seagal, it's about ego versus discipline. With Shia LaBeouf, it's chaos versus structure. With Jared Leto, it's disruptive method versus grounded reality. With Mark Wahlberg, it's brand and lifestyle versus authenticity and focus. With Dwayne Johnson, it's 2 global alpha brands trying to share one spotlight without dimming either one. On the surface, it's easy to laugh and say, "Oh, just more Hollywood drama." But underneath, these stories reveal something much more human. They show us that even the guys who seem invincible on screen have limits. They get tired. They get annoyed. They get fed up with people who waste their time, disrespect the crew, or turn a day's work into a circus. Jason Statham has built his career on being the man who gets things done. No fuss, no drama, no excuses. And if that means quietly crossing a few names off the list of people he's willing to work with, so be it. Now, the question is, what do you think? Were his rumored grudges justified? If you were in his position, would you walk away from a massive paycheck just to avoid someone whose attitude drives you insane? Or do you think this is all just one big swirl of ego, contracts, and exaggerated stories that come with the territory of being a star? Tell me in the comments whose side you'd be on in these clashes, the disciplined pro who hates nonsense, or the wild artist who believes chaos creates greatness. And if you've ever worked with someone who made your job harder for no good reason, you already know how he feels. If you enjoyed diving into the hidden side of Hollywood, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There are plenty more untold stories, quiet rivalries, and behind-the-scenes battles to explore. You definitely won't want to miss what's coming next.